I painted a mural for a campground! I got in contact with Quinney's bush camp through cold emailing, and I got the opportunity to fly to Nelson in South Island to paint them 2 murals. Honestly, as soon as I got the job, I was so scared. Where will I buy my stuff? How much of my own stuff can I bring with me? This is my first outdoor mural, how am I going to transfer the design? But my motto in life is, figure it out later. I have put myself in situations where I didn't know how to do something, and I just tell myself, I'll figure it out, it'll work out, the outcome will be good. So while I had no clue how I was actually going to do the mural until I booked the flights and planned it, I just believed I could, and I did! This video is going to go through the process from start to finish, from how I got in contact with the client to flying to Nelson and then painting the mural, plus a bit of my travels. This project was full of ups and downs, and it was a real emotional roller coaster, but I got through it. So let's begin. It started with an email. I have been looking for holiday parks / motel clients for a while. I thought it would be a great way to travel the country while also putting money back into the trip. I started by contacting Airbnbs, but I got flagged by the system pretty quick. So I put out my trusty Google Maps and started looking for holiday parks. And while that is usually a great tactic for me, I found an even better method this time. An online directory of all the holiday parks in New Zealand. It's literally holidayparks.co.nz. This was my first email to the client. Side note, I'm super pro at cold emailing, and it has literally gotten all my career opportunities, and so I'll be making a detailed video on cold emailing at a later time. I sent 175 emails and got 1 client, and that's all I need. When initially talking to the client, we discussed possible locations on site, as well as possible content of what the mural would be. In our video call, the client mentioned that he really liked my Milford sound piece and wanted something based off that. Side note again, always include personal work in your portfolio. With a bit of back and forth and a video call later, I sent them a mood board with all the ideas we had discussed. This contains my own work as well as work from other artists as inspiration. I also included an estimate on the last page, which gave the client 2 price options as well as listed all my inclusions. As this was a travel job, I clearly stated that my price minimum would be $3,000. If the client has no idea of budget, giving them multiple options lets your client have a cost choice as well as you setting your own minimum. Often clients have little to no experience working with artists, so setting the standard and giving price options makes it less intimidating for the client. And if your client wants to negotiate, they can now see what a reasonable negotiation would be. The options I presented to the client were 3 murals for $4,000 or 2 for $3,500, and they chose the latter. So at this point, the client has paid a 50% deposit, so I need to get a drawing. This is a stage that I procrastinate the most. I tell myself I'm letting the ideas marinate, but I'm just avoiding doing the work. Sometimes I will have to go to a cafe to focus on drawing for a solid hour. Sometimes it's hard to work from home in the concept stage because you look around your house and it's kind of like, oh well, there's so many things to do, and when the concept is not going well, when you can't think of ideas on the spot, I just kind of procrastinate and do other things. So that's why I am out in public. Got 3 concepts here, that rough sketches that I'm just coloring up so that I can send it to the client. I prefer to send my client colored concepts because for me it's a bit hard to picture what it's gonna be like as a finished product. It takes out one less round of revisions. You're not asking the client, which color palette is this? Would you like blah blah blah? Instead, I send them 3 different concepts with 3 different color combinations, and then what I get them to do is pick a color combination, I pick a color scheme, or they are free to mix and match between the 2, or they can say, no, they all suck, I want something that's more brighter or more bluer, something like that. And then I think it makes it easier for everybody to narrow down. That's at least what has worked for me and my clients so far. I know some people like to work in black and white first and send their clients black and white sketches, but it's a bit hard to picture the finished product, so I like to take one step out of the process basically. So now I have my 6 concepts, 3 for each side. I lay them out on a PDF and mock them up. This helps the client visualize while also protecting your artwork from theft. unfortunately it can happen, so that's why I always mock up when I can and always put it into a page on a PDF. Never send high quality artwork. For the main mural, I definitely had to include a version of my Milford sound piece. The client requested that I draw inspiration from their private lake, which has a built-in slide. That was the main inspiration for that site. The quote that the client settled on was "vacation mode activated," and it was actually a ChatGPT phrase. I was needing some inspo, so I asked ChatGPT for short Instagram captions for holiday. The second mural was very leafy as a client wanted to encourage guests to do a good job of recycling. Now, this kind of client is very rare. They chose a concept for each site and had no notes. I was literally in shock. So my client got back to me with feedback from my initial concepts, and dream client, they basically approved everything. They just want some color changes on one of the designs and bada bing bada boom. So what I'm doing now is I'm just cleaning up the concepts, just like making the lettering a bit nicer, doing that color palette change, just tidying up the design a little bit. It was mostly ready to go, but yeah, just making the edges neater and stuff. Yes, I'm working on that now. And yeah, once I have these finalized designs ready, I'll send it back to the client just for color checks. And yeah, this is the easiest client I've ever had to deal with. The easiest client I've ever had the privilege of working with. We changed the color palette of the recycling mural because the background was going to be a warm wood stain. And that's not like a feedback thing, it's more like a what do you think? I sent back revisions with better lettering and the color palette change. The client was concerned about the orange, so I brightened that up so it would stand out against the wall. And now we're good to go. Hello! So this is the mural stencil that I will be bringing to Nelson. I decided to print it out because it's going to be outdoors and I just don't know what I have access to, so this is like the safest method, especially since I've got type and I've got some characters that I'm not that familiar with drawing. So yeah, I made 3 copies. For the recycling mural, I wanted to try the doodle method as it's a simple design, so I think I can execute it well, even if I had to freehand it. I started booking the flights, car and ferry for the trip. I also looked up where the hardware store is so I know where to buy paint. I had the wise idea of bringing my whole family along, so instead of flying directly to Nelson and driving 40 minutes, we decided to fly to Wellington, take a 3.5-hour ferry and drive 2.5 hours with a screaming toddler. So much easier. We flew from Auckland to Wellington pretty late since we had to wait for hubby to finish work. Got to Wellington at 10 PM, got to the Airbnb and stayed for the night, woke up at 5 AM because of the little gremlin and took the ferry to Picton. This was a really lovely ride actually. A lot of people were telling us that it was going to be so boring and there's a high risk of cancellations and breakdowns, but that didn't happen that day. In fact, it was quite nice. The water was calm, there was lots to explore on the ferry, and Ollie had a great time running around. The views were gorge. Freaking love South Island. Anywhere with mountains has my heart. When we got to Picton, we had a quick lunch before heading off to Bunnings to get my paint. After I got a few colours mixed, I realised I made a huge mistake by using so many colours. We then drove 2 hours to Quinney's, checked in and settled in our little caravan and cabin. The in-laws and baby got a cabin, while Ben and I had a few cozy nights together in the van. After we got all our stuff sorted, I set out to trace the first mural while it was still light and the sky was clear. I printed out these A0 plan sheets of the design, taped them together, and ran colour chalk all over the back of the paper. Have you ever used a checkbook or a receipt book and writing on it gives you a copy? So it's basically like that. We are creating a carbon/chalk copy and going over it with pencil so the design can transfer. This worked really well for this design. Now for painting. The next day's weather was not kind to me. It was super windy and started raining in the afternoon, but I pushed on because I did not want to be behind schedule. The client was kind enough to put up a gazebo to protect me and the painting from the worst of the weather. I really wish I had called up Bunnings or something beforehand so I can get an idea of their stock levels. For this job, a 250ml sample tin would have done just fine. But as it's an outdoor mural, I needed external paints, and sample tins are typically for indoor use only. I had to purchase $400 worth of paints. That is actually wild. So many of the colours were unavailable in smaller sizes due to the base colour availability. If you don't know what that means, let me try to explain, because I always get caught up in this myself. When you buy a can of paint, inside is a base colour. These come in a range of options, typically white, yellow, green and blue. There are probably more, but you get the idea. When you get the colour mixed, the nice paint person will have a formula that adds pigments and shake it up. To get these darker colours, you need to start with a dark base. Unfortunately for me, they only had lots of these bases available in 1 litre cans. I had to just do it because the other Bunnings is like 2 hours away. A number of things went wrong with this Bunnings trip actually. So not only did I have to spend extra because of the size availability, but 2 of the little cans they gave me for yellow were actually oil based. As I'm painting the yellow, I keep thinking that this is unusually thick, but maybe that's because it's an exterior paint? I haven't painted outdoors before, so I guess it's like it needs to be stronger or something. But no. As soon as I go to rinse the brush, I realize it's oil and I have made a huge mistake by not double checking the cans. I didn't want to buy turpentine and get all messy, so I kept the brush moist with some wet wipes in a Ziploc bag, and at the end of the mural, I just threw the brush away. So sad. I love that brush. One of the yellows completely dried up in the can too, so at least I got a refund for that. I checked the other cans and realized they didn't mix the purple, it's just a blue base. Ugh. I had to ask Ben to get me the purple, but guess what? It was only available in 1 litre. I also forgot to buy a pink, but I just decided to forget about it and do with what I have since I have so many colours already. Other than those initial hiccups, everything else went really well for this mural. There wasn't anything technically about this mural that I was uncomfortable with, so it came together really well. I traced the lettering on after the sun was dry and it looked so good. So happy with how the lettering came out. I also got bitten by so many sandflies at this mural. I eventually changed into long leggings and wore my hubby socks to cover my skin, but I counted at least 20 bites and they are way worse than mosquito bites. I kept waking through the night to itch them. And bam! Finished mural. I really appreciate the client going all in for this mural. They built this board from scratch and even planted trees and shrubs around it, so when it matures, it'll all look so cohesive together. The tree stump is going to be turned into a chair so you can really get your vacation mode on. The next mural was painted towards the back of the park near the lake. This mural was to remind guests to please recycle properly. I knew I wanted to transfer this design using the doodle grid because the design was pretty simple and I knew if the shapes were a bit skewed it wouldn't look too bad. But a couple hiccups happened with this. The size of the site was a little bit longer than anticipated, so I had to adjust the design a bit, space the shapes out and enlarge the type. I couldn't do this uniformly because The width of the site was longer than anticipated, while the height had been accounted for. Drawing the doodles was quite fun. I made a bunch of random shapes and illustrations, but it was a bit hard capturing the chalk marks and putting it into Procreate. My iPad photos were so low quality I couldn't really see the doodles. So I tried using my phone, which was a little better, but again not great. My phone is Android and I had no more data, so I had to go back to the caravan to grab my husband's phone, turn on the hotspot, and then send the photo to my iPad on Messenger. AirDrop is the only thing that's kind of making me want to get an iPhone, but I really don't want one. I was thinking of upgrading to a Samsung again in the future, but AirDrop is literally so useful. I use it between my iPad and MacBook. Side note, data is so expensive in New Zealand. I pay $30 a month for 3 gigs. That is one of the main reasons why I can't wait to move back to Australia, because $40 can get me 80 gigs. Is it totally necessary? Maybe not. But running out of data is so annoying since a lot of communication is done through apps now instead of text. So anyway, I'm trying to overlay the design onto the photos in Procreate to see where to place the design. The idea is that instead of measuring and drawing grid lines, you can draw doodles, use Procreate to overlay the design, and you'll be able to transfer the design like that. So for example, the corner of the square goes just below the star and in between the leaf. If you have experience with the doodle method on a larger scale, please tell me how you did it. I've seen people use bits of painter's tape too, so I might try that in the future. The colour bases were taking ages to dry. It was quite rainy and humid that day, so I think that might have been why. But even in the morning, it wasn't fully cured, but I needed to finish it because I was leaving the next day. It was dry enough to touch, so I did another doodle grid over the top to line up my lettering. Once I painted all the words, I realised that the paint was slipping off, like it was literally sliding down. I still haven't quite figured out why, since the reception mural was fine. See, it's doing it there, but it's not doing it on the blue. Oh shit. I have to finish it today because I'm leaving tomorrow. But I think it might have been a combination of humidity and the paint not curing, the two paints being different brands, and that I painted the orange and the green too thick. I decided to wipe off the paint and redo it in yellow, as that seemed to stick to all the colours. It wasn't ideal as the yellow didn't pop as much, but it's better than having the words slide off. Another option I could have done was to sand back the areas for the lettering, but I didn't have time to make a 2-hour round trip to Bunnings. The pink was also being a slippery bugger, so I painted the leaves on the wood and kind of expanded the design while using the peach colour from the reception mural to add leaves inside the design. Overall, it turned out well. Maybe if I get asked to paint more murals around the park, I will repaint the lettering to be white. After I finished both murals, my husband treated me to a lovely dinner in Nelson as a congratulations, and also to thank the in-laws for doing so much with the baby. I'm really proud of this job. Despite the hiccups, the mural turned out really well and the client loved them. My family was proud of me and got to see me do my thing. I'm mostly proud of myself for putting myself out there and finding this client on my own and putting in the effort to look for a remote client. And I got to do it in such an amazing place. I really wanted to find a client I could stay with, so a holiday park, motel, or hotel, and I got it. So grateful to God for this opportunity. This just happens to be the city that my in-laws first moved to when they moved to New Zealand, and so it kind of felt full circle to be giving them a reason to visit. They haven't been back here in 20 years, so a lot has changed. They got to visit their old house and a lot of old memories came back. I'm so glad they got to be able to do that. Should I have brought my whole family with a toddler on my first travel job? I'm not sure, but it was a fun experience regardless, and we got to spend some time together exploring a bit of Wellington. I got free babysitting for a whole week, so I think that was a big plus. Here is a Wellington travel montage. Thank you for watching this video. I can't believe I'm officially a traveling artist. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments and I'll try my best to answer them. If you're a mural artist, Please don't comment on my painting technique, I already know. But if you do have tips on how to do design transfers, do tell. Till the next video. Bye! You have to come. You have to come. I don't know what else to tell you. You just have to visit Quinney's. Okay, yeah. I don't know if I've said that. This is Quinney's Bush Camp. You must visit Quinney's Bush Camp, okay? This is a must-do for all young families, old families, no families, whatever. Just come and visit.